Jamal Rivers sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the faded posters on his wall. They were old pictures of famous music producers, people he looked up to since he was a little boy. The room felt small, almost like it was shrinking around him. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a soft orange glow over the quiet neighborhood in southern Georgia. It should have been peaceful, but tonight, everything felt tense. Downstairs, his parents were arguing again. Not with each other. This time it was about him. He needs to stop wasting time with that nonsense, his father's deep voice echoed through the floorboards. Music? Beats? He's 16. He should be thinking about real life, not dreaming about fame. His mother's voice followed, softer, but still firm. He's smart. He's not out running with the wrong crowd. He stays home. Maybe it's just a phase. Jamal closed his eyes. He'd heard this conversation too many times before. But tonight, it was different. The shouting was louder, the words sharper. He knew what was coming, and deep inside he was scared. Earlier that day, Jamal had come home excited. He'd stayed late after school to help a teacher with the computer lab, and she let him use some free time to mess around with music software. He had finally finished a beat he'd been working on for weeks, and it sounded good. Really good. He couldn't wait to play it for someone. He thought maybe, just maybe, his dad would finally be proud. But when he walked into the kitchen and tried to share the news, it all fell apart. "You stayed after school to play with music stuff again?" His father said, his face tightening. "Didn't I tell you about wasting your time?" "It's not a waste, Dad," Jamal replied quietly, holding back frustration. "I'm getting better. Miss Landry says I have talent." His father laughed, but it wasn't a kind laugh. "Talent won't feed you. Talent won't keep a roof over your head. This is exactly why you need to start thinking about the army or trade school. You're not going to be some star, Jamal. You need to grow up." Jamal had wanted to say more, but his mother's sad eyes told him not to push it. So, he went upstairs, carrying his disappointment like a weight on his shoulders. Now, as the sky darkened outside his window, footsteps came up the stairs. His heart beat faster. The door creaked open, and his father stood there, arms crossed. "Pack your things," he said flatly. Jamal looked up confused. "What?" "You heard me. I've had enough of this foolishness. You don't want to listen. You don't want to respect the rules of this house. Then it's time for you to go." Jamal sat frozen. "Go where?" "That's not my concern. Anymore." His mother appeared behind his father, her face pale. "Wait, we can talk about this. He's still a child." "No, he wants to be a man." "Let him live like one," his father snapped. Tears welled up in Jamal's eyes, but he refused to let them fall. He stood up slowly, still not fully believing what was happening. Within 20 minutes, Jamal was standing outside the house, a small duffel bag in one hand and a worn-out pair of sneakers on his feet. The street was quiet, the stars beginning to peek through the sky above. His father stood on the porch, arms still crossed. His mother stood behind him, her hand covering her mouth. She wanted to say something, but no words came out. Jamal looked back one last time. No goodbye, no hug, just silence. And then, he walked. At first, he had no idea where he was going. He just knew he couldn't turn around. Every step felt heavy, but also freeing. The world was wide, and he was just one small boy trying to figure out his place in it. By midnight, he had reached the edge of the small town. He found a quiet bench near a bus station and sat down. His stomach growled, but he had only $40 in his pocket, money he had been saving for a cheap keyboard. He thought about buying food but decided to hold on to it. Something told him he'd need it for more important things soon. The night was long. He barely slept, afraid someone might steal his bag or try to chase him away. But when the morning sun rose, he stood up, brushed himself off, and told himself, "You're not going back. You're going forward." Jamal found a city bus and used some of his money to get to Atlanta, the closest big city. It wasn't like the movies. The buildings were tall, the streets busy, but life was not easy. Jamal walked for hours, asking people if they knew of any shelters or places where he could get help. Eventually, he found a youth shelter. It was small, but clean. The workers there were kind. They gave him a hot meal, a place to sleep, and listened when he talked. For the first time in a long while, someone told him, "You've got potential." Jamal stayed there for a few weeks. During the day, he helped clean or volunteered at the local library. At night, he'd spend hours on the library computers, teaching himself how to use music software. He watched tutorials, downloaded free loops, and studied how other producers made beats. He didn't have fancy tools, but he had something better: patience and hunger. There were tough days, of course. Days he missed home. Days he felt invisible in the big city. But every time he finished a beat, it reminded him why he left. He wanted a future that looked nothing like his past. He wanted to create something real, something lasting. One afternoon, while working on a beat in a quiet studio space at the community center, a local DJ named Marcus overheard him. The DJ was known in the underground scene, always looking for fresh talent. He listened for a few minutes, then tapped Jamal on the shoulder. "You make that?" Jamal turned, nervous. "Yeah, I did." The man smiled. "You've got something, kid. Rough edges, but something real." That one conversation would change everything. Jamal didn't know it then, but his journey had just begun. He was still just a teenager, homeless, far from his family, unsure of the future. But he had a spark, a dream. And even though life had pushed him out into the world too soon, Jamal had decided he wouldn't let the world tell him who he was. He would find his own voice. And someday, they would hear it. Life in the city was nothing like Jamal had imagined when he first got off the bus in Atlanta. The tall buildings, the busy streets, and the noise made him feel small. But deep inside, he held on to one thing: his dream. He didn't come to the city to get lost. He came to build something, even if he had to start with nothing. The shelter where he was staying was small but safe. The people running it were kind. But Jamal knew he couldn't stay there forever. They helped young people, like him, but space was limited. He needed to find his own path. Every morning he would leave early, sometimes before the sun was up, and spend hours walking through the city looking for places that had internet access or computers he could use. He didn't have a laptop or phone, but he had a notebook where he sketched out beat patterns and lyrics, sometimes even drawing pictures of what his dream music studio would look like. One day, while visiting a local library, Jamal found a sign that said, "Free Music Production Workshop, Saturdays at 4 p.m. His heart raced. He circled the date, arrived an hour early, and waited quietly in the back as the session began. A group of kids sat around old desktop computers while a man in a hoodie with headphones around his neck taught them how to use music software. Jamal paid close attention. Even though he didn't understand everything at first, he watched, listened, and asked questions when he could. The teacher, a friendly man named Mr. Harlan, noticed his curiosity. "You've been here every Saturday," Mr. Harlan said one afternoon after class. "You serious about music?" Jamal nodded quickly. "It's the only thing that makes sense to me." Mr. Harlan smiled and handed him a USB stick. "Here, has some free loops and samples. Practice on the library computers. When you're ready, come find me. I run a community studio. It's not fancy, but we help kids who are serious." Jamal thanked him and went straight to the computer. That small gift was everything to him. For the next few months, he spent every free hour at the library, learning every tool, every button, every sound. He watched free tutorials online, sometimes writing down entire lessons by hand so he could read them later. By the time he visited Mr. Harlan's studio, he had created a small collection of his own beats. They weren't perfect, but they were his. Mr. Harlan listened carefully, nodding along to the rhythm. "Raw," he said, tapping the table, "but it's got soul. You've got a sound." From that day on, Jamal became part of the studio family. It wasn't a real job. He swept floors, ran errands, and helped set up for events, but they let him use the equipment when it wasn't busy. Sometimes he would stay there until midnight, working on a beat, tweaking every sound, learning from every mistake. Word began to spread about the quiet kid with the serious eyes and steady hands. Local artists started asking him for beats. Most couldn't pay much, but Jamal didn't care. He gave them what he made, happy just to hear his work on someone else's track. He was building something, slowly, piece by piece. During this time, Jamal never forgot where he came from. He thought about his parents often, especially his mom. He wondered if she missed him. He imagined her listening to the radio and maybe, just maybe, hearing one of his songs someday. But he didn't let the sadness pull him down. He used it in his music. Every beat told a story, of nights on a bus bench, of walking for hours, of dreaming with empty pockets. As the years passed, Jamal kept growing. He started calling himself Rivs, a short form of his last name, Rivers. He liked the way it sounded. Simple, easy to remember. One day, while brainstorming with a friend at the studio, someone added "on the beat" to it. "Rivs on the beat," they said. That sounds official. It stuck. By his early 20s, Jamal was known in the local scene. His beats had a signature feel, emotional, smooth, with a touch of old-school soul and modern rhythm. He didn't have a big studio, no manager, no expensive equipment, but artists came to him because he listened. He didn't just make beats, he helped tell their stories. Eventually, one of those local tracks caught the attention of a bigger artist passing through Atlanta. The rapper, known in the Southern music circuit, heard the beat on a mixtape and asked, "Who made this?" When the answer came back, "Some kid named Reeves works out of a community center," the rapper looked him up. That meeting changed everything. The rapper invited Jamal to a real studio, and for the first time, Jamal walked into a place with soundproof walls, glowing equipment, and a full production team. But instead of feeling nervous, he felt ready. He had trained for this, worked for this. The track they recorded together was released a few months later. It didn't become a huge hit, but it gained attention. Blogs wrote about it. Other artists started calling. Slowly, Jamal's phone began to ring more often. He started getting paid. Not big money at first, but more than he'd ever earned. He saved every dollar. He lived simply, stayed in a small shared apartment, and put his money toward better tools, music licenses, and setting up his own tiny workspace. But even with all the progress, Jamal never forgot how it started. He never forgot the day he stood outside his old house with a bag in his hand and no place to go. That memory was his fuel. He didn't carry anger anymore. He carried purpose. Years passed. Jamal was now 28. He had worked with several known artists, though he still stayed behind the scenes. He didn't chase the spotlight. He was quiet, focused, and respectful. People loved working with him. He had learned how to handle business, how to trust the right people, and how to protect what he built. Then one day, while visiting a real estate website out of curiosity, he typed in the address of his childhood home. There it was. The house was for sale. Not just that, it was in bad shape. The neighborhood had changed. The yard was overgrown. The windows cracked. The listing said, "Foreclosure," in bold letters. Jamal sat in silence for a long time, staring at the screen. Memories flooded in, both good and painful. He could still see his mom cooking dinner, his dad fixing the car, his little room with the music posters. It all felt distant, like a story from someone else's life. And then, without telling anyone, Jamal did something unexpected. He called the number on the screen. He bought the house. Quietly. No fanfare. No announcements. He used the money he had saved over the years, hired workers to fix it up, repaint the walls, clean the yard, and make it look beautiful again. He didn't know why he was doing it at first. Maybe it was closure. Maybe it was healing, or maybe he was preparing for something he wasn't ready to face just yet. But deep down, he knew. He wasn't done with his story. He was just getting to the part no one saw coming. Jamal stood in front of the old house, the one he once called home. It looked nothing like it did when he was a teenager. The paint was fresh, the windows were new, and the yard was clean and green. But the steps leading to the porch were the same. He remembered sitting there as a boy, dreaming about music, wondering what his future would look like. Back then, he never imagined he'd be the one buying this house. He never thought he'd return like this, successful, quiet, and with a plan that no one else knew. After buying the house, Jamal didn't move in. Instead, he worked on fixing every corner of it. He hired a local crew to help renovate it completely. The kitchen got new cabinets, the living room new flooring, and even his old bedroom got a fresh coat of paint. He stood in that room one evening, looking at the empty walls. So much had changed, but a part of him still remembered the boy who once lived there, the boy who had been told his dreams didn't matter. Jamal could have done anything with the house. He could have sold it or kept it for himself. But deep inside, he knew what he wanted to do. It wasn't about money or proving a point. It was about something bigger, something that had grown inside him over the last 12 years. He had been keeping an eye on his parents from a distance, quietly. He didn't follow them in person, but through public records and word from old neighbors, he learned what had happened after he left. Life hadn't been easy for them either. After Jamal was gone, his father lost his job. Bills started to pile up. The house slipped into foreclosure, and eventually, they had to move into a small rented apartment on the other side of town. Jamal didn't feel happy about that. He didn't feel angry either, just sad. Time had softened his heart even after all the pain. He had learned through his journey that people make mistakes, sometimes big ones, but he also learned that pain doesn't have to last forever. It could be turned into something good. He started planning a surprise, something no one would expect. He contacted an old neighbor who still lived nearby and explained the situation. The woman was shocked to hear from Jamal after so many years, but she agreed to help. She knew his parents still drove by the old house, every Sunday after church, slowing down to look at it, remembering better days. So Jamal made sure the renovations were finished before one of those Sundays. On that morning, he waited inside the house, standing behind the front door. He watched from the window as his parents' car slowly approached. Just like the neighbor said, they slowed down in front of the house. His mother pointed out the window. His father stared at the porch. Jamal stepped outside. At first, they didn't recognize him. He had grown taller. His hair was neatly trimmed and he wore a simple, clean outfit. But when his mother looked closer, her hand went to her mouth. She whispered something. The car pulled over. Slowly, both of them got out. "Jamal?" his mother asked, her voice shaking. He nodded. His father stood still, unsure of what to say. Jamal walked down the steps, his heart pounding. He wasn't sure how this moment would go. He had imagined it many times, sometimes as a reunion, sometimes as an argument, sometimes with no words at all. But now that it was real, all he felt was calm. "Hi," he said softly. His mother walked toward him, tears in her eyes. She reached out slowly, like she was afraid he might disappear. When her hands touched his shoulders, she pulled him into a hug. For a long time, neither of them spoke. His father stayed a few steps behind, his face unreadable. After a while, Jamal looked at both of them. "This house," he said, "I bought."
"I fixed it up, and it's yours again if you want it." His mother gasped. "You, what?" "I bought it back," Jamal said. "No tricks, no rent, no payments, just yours." His father stepped forward. "Why?" he asked. His voice
wasn't angry, just confused. "After everything that happened, after what I said, why would you do this?" Jamal looked at him. "Because I didn't want to carry hate in my heart. That day, when I left, I promised myself I'd never forget how it felt, but I also promised myself I'd do something good with that pain. And this felt right." Silence fell between them. His mother looked around at the porch, the yard, the clean windows. Her eyes were full of tears. "It looks just like it did before," she whispered. Jamal smiled. "Better, I think." That evening, they all sat together, in the living room, the same room where years ago they had once argued, cried, and fallen apart. This time they were quiet, but the silence was peaceful. His parents had questions, of course. Where had he been? What had he done? How did he build this life? Jamal told them pieces of the story about the shelter, the studio, the music. He didn't talk about everything. Some things were still too personal. But he told them enough to help them understand that he had never been lost, just on a different road. They listened. For the first time, his father didn't interrupt or argue. He simply nodded. Jamal could tell the man was struggling with guilt, with pride, with all the emotions that come when a father sees his child return stronger than ever. Later that week, Jamal helped them move back into the house. He stayed nearby in a rented apartment but visited often. They shared quiet meals, long walks, and slow conversations. It wasn't perfect. The past couldn't be erased, but it didn't have to be. They were building something new, step by step. News of Jamal's act slowly spread around the neighborhood. People were surprised to hear that the boy who had once disappeared had returned, not to fight, but to give. Some called it forgiveness, others called it strength. But Jamal didn't care what they called it. He just wanted peace. One day, as he sat on the same porch steps from years ago watching the sunset, his father joined him. "I was wrong," his father said quietly. "I didn't understand your dream. I thought I was protecting you, but maybe I was just scared." Jamal looked over and nodded. "I know. I was scared too." The two men sat together side by side, not saying much else. But they didn't need to. Sometimes healing doesn't come with big speeches. Sometimes it's just sitting together, knowing that something broken had found a way to be whole again. Jamal's journey had taken him far from home. It had tested him, shaped him, and taught him who he really was. And now, back where it all began, he had done something few people could imagine. He gave back what had once been taken from him. Not for applause, not for attention, but because he knew what it meant to rise without bitterness. The house on the corner, once filled with pain, now held something new, hope. A few weeks had passed since Jamal gave the house back to his parents. Life in the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. Birds chirped in the trees, kids played outside, and the sun seemed to shine a little brighter on the block. But something had changed, quietly, deeply. People noticed that the old Rivers house, once empty and broken, now looked alive again. Flowers grew along the fence. Lights glowed warmly through the windows each evening. And sometimes neighbors saw a young man with kind eyes and calm steps walking up the porch and sitting beside his parents. Jamal didn't move back in with his parents. He had his own small apartment in the city now, filled with music equipment and notebooks full of beats and lyrics. But he visited often, sometimes just to have dinner, sometimes just to check on things, and sometimes simply to sit in silence and breathe in the past that no longer hurt. His mother, Miss Rivers, had started cooking again. She filled the kitchen with the smells of baked chicken, cornbread, and her famous sweet potato pie. Every time Jamal visited, she insisted he take leftovers. "You need to eat, baby. Making all that music burns energy," she'd say with a laugh. His father, Mr. Rivers, had changed too. He still wasn't a man of many words, but he spoke softer now. He asked Jamal about his work, listened carefully, and even offered help fixing up Jamal's apartment one day. It was a small thing, hanging curtains, tightening door handles, but it meant something. It was his way of saying, "I care," even if he didn't know how to say it out loud. One Saturday afternoon, Jamal invited them both to a small music event he was helping organize at the community center. It wasn't a big concert, just a gathering of local artists and producers with music, food, and a few performances. Jamal didn't tell anyone his parents were coming. He didn't want attention. But when they walked in and saw their son standing on stage introducing a young rapper, their eyes lit up. They watched as Jamal moved around the event like a quiet leader, checking sound levels, giving advice, encouraging others. He wasn't just a music producer now. He was a mentor, a role model to the younger kids who came in with nothing but dreams, just like he once had. One boy, no older than 16, came up to him during the event. "Mr. Reeves," the boy said, using Jamal's artist name. How do you make it when you got no one? When everybody tells you to give up? Jamal smiled gently. You keep going anyway, he said. Not for them, for yourself. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need to believe. Hard enough for both of you. The boy nodded, eyes shining with hope. Mr. Rivers stood in the back, listening. He looked down, thinking of the words he had once told his own son, words that pushed Jamal away. He blinked back the heaviness in his chest. He knew he couldn't undo the past, but watching Jamal now, helping others walk the same hard path he once walked, filled him with both pride and quiet regret. After the event, they all sat on a bench, outside the center. The evening breeze carried the sound of laughter and music from inside. Jamal handed his parents bottled water and they drank quietly for a moment. You've built something beautiful here, his mother said softly. Jamal shrugged a little. It's not much yet. But it is, she said. You don't just make music. You give people a reason to try again. That's rare, son. He smiled, feeling the warmth of her words settle in his heart. The following week, something unexpected happened. A local journalist who had heard about Jamal's story showed up at the studio. She had been writing articles about community leaders and was curious about the quiet producer everyone kept talking about. She asked for an interview. At first, Jamal said no. He didn't like attention. He preferred to let his music speak, but then he thought about that boy who had asked him how to keep going. He thought about the others like him, kids kicked out, forgotten, or left behind, who didn't know that someone like Jamal had once walked in their shoes. So he said yes. The article came out a week later, titled, "The Beat of Second Chances: How One Young Man Turned Pain into Purpose." It told the story of Jamal's journey, from being pushed out of his home to finding music, rebuilding his life, and eventually returning to buy the very house he was once forced to leave. The story spread online. People from all over the city began to share it. Some reached out to Jamal, thanking him for his courage. Others donated to the community center, hoping to support more kids like him. One day, while reading through emails, Jamal found a message from someone he didn't expect. It was from his old high school music teacher, Mrs. Porter. I read your story, she wrote. I always believed in you. I wish I could have done more back then. Just know I'm proud of you. Jamal smiled. He remembered Mrs. Porter. She was one of the few adults who had taken the time to listen to him, who encouraged him when others didn't. He wrote back, thanking her, and even invited her to visit the studio sometime. That week, Jamal sat down and created a new track. It had soft piano notes layered with the gentle sound of children laughing, and a beat that slowly built into something strong and steady. He called it Homecoming. It wasn't just a song. It was a message, a celebration of coming full circle, of finding your way back not just to a place but to the people you once thought you'd lost forever. He played the track for his parents one evening. His mother listened with her eyes closed, swaying slowly. When the song ended, she wiped her eyes and said, "It's like you turned your whole journey into music." His father simply said, "That's the best thing I've ever heard." And for the first time, Jamal believed him. From that moment on, Jamal decided to do more than just make beats. He started offering free workshops at the community center, teaching music production to teens who couldn't afford lessons. He told them his story, not to get sympathy, but to show them what was possible. He helped them believe in themselves, the way he had to learn to believe in himself. He named the program Second Note, because everyone deserves a second chance, and every song deserves more than just one beginning. His parents came to the first workshop. They watched quietly as Jamal guided the kids, showing them how to create, how to listen, how to express their hearts through sound. They saw something in him that went beyond talent. They saw purpose. Jamal didn't think of himself as a hero. He didn't think he had done anything special. He had just kept going step by step, choice by choice, until one day he looked up and realized he had created something meaningful. Not just music, but change. Months passed and Jamal's life continued to grow in ways he never imagined. The music program he started, Second Note, was now helping more than a dozen young people. Every Saturday, the community center was filled with laughter, music, and the steady sound of beats being created. The kids weren't just learning how to make songs. They were learning how to trust themselves, how to express what they felt inside, and how to keep going even when life got tough. Jamal watched them closely, always patient, always kind. He remembered how lost he had once been, how hard it was to smile when the world felt cold. But now he was part of a circle that brought warmth to others. He had become the person he once needed, and that thought made his heart full. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Rivers, continued to live in the house. Jamal had bought for them. Every week Jamal would visit, and every time he stepped inside it felt more like home. The silence that had once lived between them was now filled with shared meals, small talks, and moments of peace. One evening, Jamal came by with a box in his hands. His parents were sitting on the front porch enjoying the sunset. He sat down beside them and placed the box on the table. "What's this?" his father asked. Jamal smiled. "Something I've been working on." Inside the box were copies of Jamal's first full music album. The cover was simple, a black and white photo of the old house, with a small gold title at the bottom, Roots Reborn. He had spent months putting it together, blending personal stories into the songs, mixing sounds that reminded him of his journey. He handed them each a copy. His mother looked at the album with tears in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. Jamal nodded. "I wanted you to have the first copies, because even though our journey had some painful moments, it also brought us here." His father opened the case and looked at the track list. Track 5, Forgiveness. "That one's about us?" Jamal looked out at the street for a moment, then turned back to him. "It's about letting go, about healing, about moving forward." His father nodded slowly. "Then I'll play it every day." The album was released online a few days later. Jamal didn't expect much. He didn't care about charts or fame. But something strange happened. The music began to spread, not just in the city, but in other places too. People from different states, even other countries, started listening. They wrote messages, sent letters, and thanked him for creating something that touched their hearts. Many of them said the same thing. "Your music made me feel like I'm not alone." Jamal read every message. Some made him smile. Some made him tear up. But all of them reminded him that he was doing something that mattered. One message stood out. It was from a woman who ran a school for troubled teens in another state. She wrote, "We play your songs in our classes. The kids say it helps them believe in their dreams again. Would you ever visit?" Jamal thought about it for a long time. He had never traveled far, and he wasn't sure if he could help kids he didn't know. But something inside him said yes. A month later, he flew out for the first time in his life. He visited the school, met the students, and told his story. They listened quietly, their eyes full of questions and hope. At the end of the visit, one boy stood up and asked, "How did you forgive the people who hurt you?" Jamal smiled softly. "I didn't do it all at once," he said. "Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing peace, little by little, every day. Not for them, but for yourself." He came back home after that trip with a heart even more open. He knew now that his story wasn't just his own. It belonged to every person who had ever felt alone, who had ever been pushed aside, who had ever had to build a life from the ground up. Back in his city, the mayor heard about Jamal's work. One morning, he received a call inviting him to a small ceremony at City Hall. Jamal thought it was a mistake. "I'm just a music producer," he said. But the voice on the other end replied, "You're more than that. You're an example." The ceremony was simple, but meaningful. Jamal was given a community award for his impact on youth and for inspiring others through his story. His parents sat in the front row, clapping the loudest. When Jamal went up to speak, he didn't say much, just a few honest words. "I didn't get here alone," he said. "I had help. I had pain. I had music. and I had a second chance. The audience stood and applauded. After the ceremony, Jamal and his parents went out for dinner. They laughed more than they talked. They took pictures, shared stories, and felt like a real family, maybe for the first time. One night, a few weeks later, Jamal sat alone in his apartment. The city lights glowed outside his window. He looked at a photo on his desk. It was from his childhood, taken years before everything changed. In it, he was sitting on the porch of the old house, holding a toy keyboard, smiling wide. He picked up the photo and whispered, "You made it." He knew the boy in the photo would be proud. He had come full circle, from rejection to return, from silence to sound, from brokenness to healing. And along the way, he had turned his deepest wounds into the strongest parts of his music. Jamal didn't know what the future would bring. Maybe more albums, maybe more kids to teach, maybe a bigger studio someday. But whatever came, he was ready. Because now he wasn't just creating beats. He was building bridges between the past and the present, between himself and the world, and most of all, between hearts that once felt too far apart.